Hello everyone, and welcome to Talking Over Tea. We are finally back with our first video of 2024. We took a bit of a break, and now we're finally getting back to doing some videos. So this is going to be our 2023 reading wrap-up, and we're just going to kind of go through our customary yearly questions, and Amelia is going to start us off.
So as usual, our first question is, how many books did we read? I was definitely not quite as much of a reader in 2023, so I only read 67 books total.
I was trying to take it a little slow, and I actually ended up reading more than I thought, and I read 89 books, though quite a few of those were audiobooks.
And our next question is, what are our top 3 favorite books from the year? And this one was pretty hard for me because I did read a lot of good books and a lot that I gave either 4 or 5 stars, but I ended up narrowing it down. The first one I have to share is Rilla of Ingleside by L.M. Montgomery. And this is the 8th and final book in the Anne of Green Gables series, so of course it was quite just an emotional read for me on many levels, not even counting the fact that it was also a really sad book. I loved this book. I don't even know what else to say. It was almost typical Ella Montgomery fashion, except for it was a very, very sad book, and it was a very, very difficult and sad book in many, many ways, but it also had hopeful elements that just made it such a wonderful story, and it was just such a wonderful and heartbreaking way to wrap up this series.
Okay, one of my favorite books was Recorder by Cathy McCrumb, and I have talked about this one a little bit. It's a dystopian set in a society where there are these children who are raised as recorders, and they are not allowed to have any of their own thoughts. They're just like there to kind of record what's happening with all the other humans and just kind of be like, it's like the government's way of like watching everything that happens. And so this one recorder goes on her first mission, and her device that like keeps her from feeling things gets broken, and so it's kind of like her journey through this, and I really enjoyed this book. This character was such an interesting perspective to read through, and I just really liked she was so like unemotional, but also she was learning how to deal with emotions and figure out what they were, and it was just really interesting, entertaining, and it was more than entertaining though. I don't know how to describe it. I just really enjoyed it. It was sci-fi, which is not my usual genre, but I really liked it, and I'm really looking forward to the next books.
My second favorite book of the year was Darkness at the Door by Intisar Khanani, which I talked about in some video at some point. I read this, I don't know, and I think I listened to it on audio. I did. And this was just another really almost sad book, but still hopeful at the same time. It's kind of hard to explain because it is the 3rd book in a trilogy, so it follows, I cannot remember anyone's names right now, I'm blanking completely, but it follows this girl who is on a quest to fight for the freedom of the people in her country, and I loved how relevant this was to our time today in like really subtle ways, and I loved the characters and how they had such unique relationships. I feel like it went way beyond YA norms in so many ways, and yeah, and also it just gave me so many things to think about in the process.
Okay, my next book is The Shining Company by Rosemary Sutcliffe. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this. This is based on a poem, and yeah, I did talk about this because I remember trying to figure out how to say this. Based on a really old poem about a battle. It follows Prosper, who is a shield bearer into these knights, and it's this battle. It's just like this epic battle, and it's very sad and also hopeful, and I just loved the way it was written, and I just loved it. It's definitely not for everyone though. Like, I don't know, if you like the books that I like,
me.
yeah, it's not extremely exciting. So if you like the things that I've liked, then you might like it.
And my last favorite book, I keep wanting to say 5-star, but I don't think this was 5-star, is Set the Stars Alight by Amanda Dykes, which I talked about several times throughout the year, and I feel like this one just really took me by surprise because I didn't have a lot of expectations going in. I don't want to go into lots of details about what this is about because I have talked about it before, but I will say the message that this story revolves around is that you can find beauty in the ashes. That is something that I was thinking about a lot last year, and it just really resonated with me. It hit me at the right time of life, and even though there are some cheesy things, the characters can be a little cheesy, and I really, really enjoyed this one, and it went above and beyond the expectations I had for it going in.
Okay, and then my last book is Yours, Constance by Emily Hayse. Okay, so this one is a pretty short book, and I've talked about the author Emily Hayse a lot, and this one it's supposed to be, it's kind of like historical fantasy, but there's very little fantasy in it. This book follows Constance, and this is set in kind of the 20s. So this book starts off with the disappearance of a magician, and that kind of sets off these chain of events where his sister has now inherited a lot of money, and she's very young, and so Constance, who is the main character, meets her, and she kind of befriends her even though they're very, very different, and she kind of looks out for her and kind of sees that something is going on, and it's all a bit mysterious, and Constance doesn't really know what's going on. So I have talked about this one in our November wrap-up, so I'm just gonna leave it with that, but I really, really enjoyed this book, and I have really come to enjoy this author's books.
Our next question is, what was our least favorite book of the year? And for me, that was The Elite by Kiera. I don't want to get into this, honestly. This is the sequel to The Selection, which my friend wanted me to read, mostly because I wasn't gonna like it. And at first, with book one, I didn't love it. I thought the writing was really bad. There was not much to the story. I thought it was going to be one of those series that I didn't love, but was kind of just enjoying and going along for the ride just to see how it played out. However, when I got to book two, I realized that was not the case. I actually hated reading it. I hated every second of listening to that book because the characters got on my nerves so much. It was so shallow and dumb and wasn't even entertaining to me. So that's my thoughts.
I was going through my list of all the books. I was picking out the ones that could possibly be my least favorite, and I was like, I don't know, like they're not really all that bad. And then I was like, oh, of course, how could I have forgotten this book? So this is The Blended Quilt by Wanda E. Brunstetter and Jean Brunstetter. You can go watch the Christian fiction video if you would like to hear a lot about this book and how much I hated it, but this was like the worst written book I've ever read. It was so boring, very dumb, and it was written so badly, and oh my goodness, I forced myself to read this. So yeah, I definitely don't recommend this one.
And next we have our most surprising read of the year. For me, that was The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O, and if I read the back to you, you will understand why. Deadly storms have ravaged Mina's homeland for generations. Her people believe the sea god, once their protector, now curses them. Each year, a beautiful maiden is sacrificed to the sea in the hopes of appeasing him. Many believe that Shim Cheong, the most beautiful girl in the village and the beloved of Mina's older brother June, may be the one to finally end the suffering. But on the night Cheong is to be sacrificed, June follows her out to sea, knowing that to interfere is a death sentence. To save her brother, Mina throws herself into the water in Cheong's stead. So basically, she goes to the spirit realm to see this sea god and become his bride. And she finds out that it's kind of all a lie, and this sea god is actually like this guy who like is just falling asleep all the time, and he's not this big powerful person like they thought he was. And while she is in this spirit realm, she meets this family of interesting people and basically she's trying to figure out how to save her village from having to go through this and to avoid the suffering that it causes, because it's not really the problem they thought it was. So I really enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I was going to. It was just, I don't know if it was just the British girl who read it to me or what, but I really I just liked how heartwarming it was, how it just made me feel good inside when we got to the end, and all of the things just kind of went together, and the characters were they were given the dreams and the destinies they have been longing for so long, and I would highly recommend this, even though it is a little weird and has an interesting premise.
My most surprising book is actually also Asian inspired, so it is Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. I also listened to this one on audiobook. Yeah, I had read a book by this author a long time ago, and I thought it was pretty good, but I didn't love it. And so my expectations were pretty low for this book. I had seen so many people reading it, and that always makes me think I'm not gonna like it because everyone just loves something and then it's usually not very good. So I went in with very low expectations, so I feel like that kind of changes how you like it. So this book is about a princess and her 6 brothers. I got it right this time. And they are cursed to become cranes or something, and she ends up with like a bowl on her head for life, and she like goes through all these things to try to rescue her brothers, and they all kind of work together to save their kingdom or something. And I just really enjoyed the sibling relationships. I mean, it's not like huge, but I feel like a lot of books don't have anything like that. You're always an orphan with no family, so it was kind of nice to get something a little different. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. Because, yeah, it just surprised me. There we go, that's what it was.
Now, on a different note, what was our most disappointing book? For me, that was Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds. Or Leeds, I can never remember. It's Lead or Leeds. And I also get that confused with Legion, like The Many Lives of Stephen
Legion. Stephen Legion.
Anyway, that's why I branded Sanderson, and I didn't enjoy this. Clearly, I had heard so much about this, and it was a really interesting premise. Like, the storyline of this book was so fascinating.
You're just telling me about it. I'm like, this sounds like such a good book.
I did talk about it in some video. I can't recall which one. And basically, it's about this guy who is so smart that he has to basically take different parts of his personality and personify them and turn them into these characters that he interacts with through his life, so everyone thinks he's crazy. And like, basically he has to buy this huge house to fit all of these people, and he has to buy plane tickets for them and do all this stuff. So it sounds really interesting, and it was, but I could not figure out the plot of this book, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. It might have been I was reading it at like 3 a.m. for a video we didn't end up making, but I don't know, I just couldn't follow it, and I didn't get the point of it. I would love to read something else like this if it made a little more sense.
I feel like I just want to try it, even though
you probably
like...
love it. It's confusing. And...
Okay, mine. This year I really didn't have any books that I was like just so excited for. So this was a little hard for me, but I actually chose 2 because they're by the same author. And so this is an author that has been on BookTube has been lauded as so great. That's the right word. Everyone seems to love her, and I just did not. So this is Jaime Jo Wright, and I read The Reckoning at Gossamer Pond, and I listened to The Haunting at Bonaventure Circus, and I did not like either one. I feel like the plots were okay. I have a whole video where I read The Reckoning at Gossamer Pond. I feel like it would have been okay, but the characters were just so... I don't know how to describe it other than the word annoying, and that just doesn't seem right, but I just did not like the characters, and I did not like a lot of the things, and the conversations were just so... I don't know.
Cheesy?
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but it's just... Yeah, clearly I didn't like it. I'm glad that other people do. I just don't.
And next we have our favorite reread of the year. Anyone who knows me won't be too surprised. It's The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. I have a copy of it that my friend gave me that I really like, that I tabbed, and it has all these cute illustrations in it. I just accidentally grabbed my other copy, which I still like. But anyway, this is about 4 little animals, and they're very British, and they go on little adventures together, and they discover the meaning of friendship and what it means to be a good friend and what it means to not be a good friend and how to look after one another. And also, it's kind of crazy what you can get out of this little book. I had actually read it before, but I rediscovered my love for it this year. I just loved it. I loved all of their little things, all of their personalities, and I loved seeing different parts of my own personality through the different characters in this story and realizing how admirable they really were. So if you haven't read this book, you better get it now, and you need to read it. And you just need to see how charming it is and see what you can learn from these 4 little animals.
Okay, and then my favorite reread was actually Amelia's favorite reread from last year, so here we go, talking about this book again. It is by Darkness Hid by Jill Williamson. Amelia made this cover for me. We've talked about this so many times, so I've read this I don't know how many times. I read this so long ago. I don't know when it was. I was probably 13 when I read this, and I'm 21 now, and I have been reading it a lot, so it's a pretty big age gap for reading this. I don't know, I just really like it, so that's all I gotta say.
But I
Yes.
actually
Oh,
talked
okay.
about the second one.
Oh,
last
you
year.
talked about the second one.
My
Okay.
my favorite
Really?
reread was the second one. So the next question is your new favorite author, and I did not have a good response to this. I felt like I had several authors that felt like they could become favorite authors, but they weren't yet favorite authors. Like I read one book that I really liked, and I might start to like more, but anyway, I picked Rudis Petty's because I really, really enjoyed I Must Betray You by her. I don't think I've talked about this book before, but I ended up listening to it on audio, and it's one that I had wanted to read, and I was so glad I did because I really, really enjoyed it. You also read it. I feel like with her books are a little bit too intense for me, but this one didn't get intense until the very end. It was about a horrible time, but you didn't really see most of it until the end when it was a little bit. It was it was pretty intense, but it was only for a small portion of the story. So this book follows Christian Florescu and his family, and he's living in Romania during the 80s, which is crazy. And a American family comes to Romania. I think the dad of the family is on a business trip there, and Christian is forced by the Romanian government to get information about them, and basically he has to go against everything that he believes and that his family believes to do this, and it is just a big challenge for him as a, I think, 17-year-old. So it's a very difficult story to read, but it teaches you a lot, and you really get invested in this story.
Oh, that was your favorite author. Okay. I was like,
Oh!
what was that?
I admire her as an author, even if I can't handle her books.
So my new favorite author, I have also only read one. Oh, you've read two. Never mind. I've read one book for this author, but I just have such a feeling that I'm going to like all or most of her other books as well, and it's Rosemary Sutcliffe, who wrote The Shining Company, and she mostly writes historical fiction, and especially like 6th century, at least that's what The Shining Company was like 6th century historical fiction, and yeah, I'm just really interested in that time period because I don't know much about it, and I just loved her writing style, so I'm really excited to read more of her books.
The next question is, what was your favorite cover of the year? My favorite cover of this year was Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. It's like this, I don't know if it's the UK cover or what it is, but it's like the leather embossed one with gold, and it's like, it's really, really pretty, and I really, really like it.
I actually had 3 covers, but we couldn't find one. I guess like it's Adorning the Dark. There it is. I like that cover. And then these 2 are by the same author because all her covers are pretty good. Okay, it's yours, Constance, and These War-Torn Hands, both by Emily Hayse. And she just has very pretty covers.
The next question is, what is one book that you can't believe you waited until 2023 to read? For me, that was Moon Over Manifest by Claire Vanderpool, and I read this in my solo vlog, and I had read Navigating Early by this author and really, really enjoyed that one, so I don't know why I waited so long to finally read this, but I really, really loved it. It was so heartwarming. The stories that you learn from and the characters that you get to know so well were just ones that really stuck with me, and I think this is great for young and old readers alike to read, and I loved how much this story meant to the author and how she just drew so much from her own history and her own family.
The book that I can't believe I waited to read is Sun by Lois Lowry. I read the other 3 in this series so long ago, I don't even know when it was. It was a long time ago. And I just never read this one. So, yeah, I listened to the whole series again because I couldn't really remember it. And yeah, I just can't believe it took me so long. This was probably my favorite book in the whole series.
Mine too.
Yeah, it was really good.
The next question is, what is one book that made you smile? For some reason this was difficult for me, but I ended up going with The Golden Road by Ellen Montgomery. I read this in some video way back in the beginning of 2023, and I loved it so much. I really tabbed this one up, and it follows all these little characters. It's actually the sequel to The Story Girl, but I love this one even more. And it just follows all the characters as they are friends, and they spend so much time together and write little newspapers together, and it made me remember what it was like to be a kid and brought back some great memories of my own. This one definitely made me smile.
So this is mine that made me smile, and it is A Time to Speak by Nadine Brandes. The only reason this one didn't make it into my top 3 was because I was going to talk about it here and I had too many, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of space them out. So this one, I like laughed in certain parts, like out loud, and I can't even remember what they were, but I just remember like laughing, and it's been a long time since I laughed in a book, like for real. So yeah, this one, that's definitely not like, this is such a funny book. It's like not like that at all. This is the sequel to A Time to Die, and I've talked about this one and A Time to Die a million times. Yeah, I really, really loved this book, and it made me laugh.
I finally convinced her to read a series that she actually liked. The next question is, what is a book that made you cry? For me, this would probably be Rilla of Ingleside, but for the sake of this video, I won't talk about that one again. I'm instead gonna go with The Blackbird Girls by Susan something like that. This was a middle grade book about the Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine during the 80s, and I don't know if I actually cried, but it was definitely a tearjerker of a story. The grandma's story, as she told it, was really, really sad, and it was such a story of loss, and then finally finding something to replace it with, and finding how to be joyful again. So I would really recommend that one.
I don't know if I actually had a book that I actually cried in, but I have two options. One is The Shining Company, which I've already talked about twice, so I'm not going to talk about it again, but it's very sad at the end. And then The Light in Hidden Places was also very sad, and I feel like I probably could have cried in that one as well. We've talked about that one 5 million times, and that was the one that you cried in last year, so yeah, it was sad.
The last question is, what was the longest book that you read? So for both of us, it was the Bible. I don't know why I said that in such a sad way, but like it wasn't.
Yeah, it was the Bible,
yeah.
So it wasn't like a fiction.
Yeah,
that's what normal
Goodreads told us.
Yes.
So it didn't give us like the next one, like what our fiction book would have been.
Mm-hmm.
So we did guess on that one. I didn't read all of that many long books, so I went with Jane Eyre. Let's see how many pages this copy is. It's like 500 pages, and the font is tiny. So I think this was probably one of my longest.
And then mine, this was a guess, but it's almost 100% probably the longest book I read, because I also did not read very long books, and that is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. It's 372 pages. I feel like it was longer than that, but
the font
whatever.
And margins are really small. So that was all of the questions we are going to talk about today, and we hope that gave you just a good recap of how our reading year went. There was a lot more we could have talked about. Surprisingly, we talked for a long time. We are very excited to be back making videos again. Though we had a good break, it's good to get back in the routine, and we're excited to see all of the books we will be reading this year. We want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.